is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. A bad luck's always coming my way.
For today's Grimm adventure, we find ourselves once again in Malibu Creek State Park. Today we're visiting the filming locations to the 2019 horror film, The Curse of La Llorona. And Jessica is looking extra freaking creepy as the weeping woman. This is gonna be fun. The opening shots to the movie The Curse of La Llorona is actually in a very famous filming location. It's this field that's right behind me known as the World Stage. In this area, they filmed Planet of the Apes, the TV show MASH, Don Coscarelli's Bubba Hotep, Mary Pickford's Daddy Longlegs. The list goes on and on. But this field is why we're here today. The movie opens up on a title card that says Mexico. The year is 1673. Now on the other side of this field, you see the mountain range? There's 3 peaks that I want to point out. 1, 2, and 3. In the opening shots to the movie, pay close attention to the mountain range. This is the exact spot where the woman who later on becomes the weeping woman, La Llorona, her and her family and her husband are dancing in the field. It all happened right here. I have to walk a little further out into the field for this scene. But of course, the family's playing, and one of the little boys covers his face like he's playing hide and go seek. And whenever he takes his hands away from his face, he sees that his family's gone. And he looks around the field, and behind him, you can see those mountains, those peaks, and that little V right there off in the distance. We get a shot from pretty much right where I'm standing of the little boy standing out in the field calling out for his mama. Not too far from the field where they were filming is this little ravine. Now in this scene, the little boy can be seen walking right towards where I'm standing. In fact, you see that tree that looks like a giant V up on the hill? It's identical.
Mama? Mama? Bartolo?
Oh my word. Saw it and immediately knew that this was the tree, the exact spot where La Llorona drowned her children. Now, truth be told, just looking at it, I can already tell that the way that they filmed it, the camera was on the other embankment. So we're gonna have to go over there and line up the shot. But right there, that is well lit by the sun, the water, that's where it happened. Wait a second, baby goal. As soon as we got here, there were some kids playing down here near the water. They took one look at you and what did they say?
Oh, they're kind of teenagers, but they said La Llorona, and we're like, oh hell no.
And they booked it.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew that this is where they were playing. That's cool. The other side of the creek is where they shot the scenes of the little boy walking closer to the water as well as running away. Well, trying to run away from his mother before she grabs him.
Bartolo?
Let's see here. In fact, if I stand right over here, you can see that rock right there in the foreground of this shot, and the tree bending just like that over top of the water. This is the shot from the movie. The Curse of La Llorona came out in 2019. And of course it's a Hollywood movie, but it is actually based off of a ghost story that was told to kids of many generations, that if the kids were to misbehave, this lady in white, the weeping woman, a woman who drowned her kids, she's a water ghost, would come for the bad children. And they actually made a movie out of it. Pretty much the entire movie took place in this house. This is where the main characters, Anna and her 2 kids, lived. Now, the fun thing about this, for their home, they actually used 2 different filming locations on opposite sides of Los Angeles. And then we're greeted to Los Angeles 1973 in a sweeping shot, which is the backyard of this building. You see a pool and a little girl running into the house. You actually see the front of the house for the first time as Anna and the kids come right out that front door right there. They missed the school bus. Now, the homeowner was telling us that not only did they film the front here, but they also filmed the second floor scenes in the house that's behind it. So that's 3 locations for this one house. We were just talking to the owner of the house. They gave us permission to get on property and walk up to the steps, which is phenomenal. And he was telling us that they actually had to bless the house. They brought a priest in while they were filming, and they blessed the house because people actually believed the curse, the story. And it terrifies children and generations. But this is it. They filmed right here. What do you think, baby ghoul? I'm sorry. La baby ghoul arena. I can't remember what we called you. It's creepy, right? This is cool. It's a beautiful home. Now, in that pool scene that you can see later on, the little girl, she comes out and she hears a woman weeping. So she walks over to a fence and she looks through it. And what does she see? You have to be a nerd to point this out, to recognize this. But first she sees the Griswold family house and Christmas Vacation. And then you see the house from Lethal Weapon and WandaVision. In the movie, Anna is a social worker, and there's a scene where she rescues 2 little boys from a closet that has a whole bunch of weird writing on it. And she takes them to this Catholic orphanage. Well, the orphanage used to stand right on the other side of this fence. So much has changed here in LA, and it's constantly changing, that they tore it down and they're building apartments. But this is where the Catholic charity once stood. I'm not at all surprised that they tore it down and probably going to be building apartments, because when you saw it in the movie, it was looking pretty derelict then. It was an establishing shot. On the top, it had the Catholic Charities neon sign on it. And speaking of signs, if you look right about the center of your screen, way off in the distance, it's the Hollywood sign. I love pointing that out. But we know that this is the location from another landmark that can be seen in the establishing shot, and that's right over here. You can't get to it, so you kind of have to drive all around until you can see it. But right across the street, you can see that through the bars. Let's lift it up. There's a very old sign that says Western Exterminator Company. It's a very old sign. You can see this in the establishing shot as well on the left-hand side of the screen. even though this is just an establishing shot, it's very important because the orphanage that used to stand here, those two little boys that Anna rescued, this is where they end up dying. I do want to point out again that La Llorona is a water ghost. And this is important because right before the two boys die, one of them notices a puddle in the hallway of the orphanage. Our next location brings us down to the LA River. In fact, right next to the First Street Bridge. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with the video that we're shooting today. But a couple months ago, we did the filming locations to a movie that came out in the 1980s known as Fright Night.
Welcome to Fright Night.
Now, in this movie, Evil Ed gets killed in an alleyway. Two different alleyways, actually, to make up the scene. The first one is closer to downtown proper. The second one was a much tighter location, and it took me forever to find this spot, so I'm actually really proud about it. Now, you see this wall on the left-hand side? It's a real wall, but it shouldn't be here. It's kind of like a fake wall. It's right down in here. If you look very closely at the scene where Evil Ed meets his demise. Pretty wild, right?
Hello, everyone.
Now, if you haven't seen the video, the link to it will be in the description of this video, but I highly recommend you watch it because it's a classic 80s vampire movie, just like Lost Boys. Some would say even better. They filmed other scenes for Fright Night underneath this bridge, as well as the movie that we're filming today, The Curse of La Llorona. Underneath this bridge is where they found the two boys that was murdered by her inside the orphanage that we were just visiting. But in order to get to the scene that we want to see, we have to climb to the top of the bridge, which is right up these stairs. I really wanted to get down to where they actually found the boys in the movie, but everything is all fenced up and we can't get down there anymore. I've looked. We've drove on both sides of the LA River to see if we can get down there, and sadly we can't. But that's all right, because there's a really cool scene from up here on the bridge. Well, isn't this kind of ominous? A woman in white, a ghostly figure standing on a bridge over top of LA River. Now, they filmed so many movies here, from Grease to, well, you name it. Grease is the big one. But right here, looking right down the river from the First Street Bridge, is this shot from The Curse of La Llorona. That's beautiful. Now, sadly, they tore down the 6th Street Bridge. They're building a new one that's over there, but it's here where you can actually see the 6th Street Bridge as well as the 4th Street Bridge. Pretty much my entire life, I've wanted to be in this exact spot. Well, down there in the actual LA River Basin because of the movie Grease. We can't really get down there legally. There's a few parts where you can actually get down there, but not for this. It's from here on top of this bridge where you can see it in the movie, and somewhere under this bridge, at least it appears that way, is where the two little boys were found. Our next location brings us to this beautiful church right here known as the St. Brendan Church. Now, before we get into the movie, I do also want to point out that Guns N' Roses filmed part of their music video, November Rain, here. But for the movie that we're here for, they filmed a couple really interesting scenes. The first scene that we're going to talk about is what happened on the other side of this fence that's between this church and this building. From right about where I'm standing, you get a shot of Anna, and she's watching a ceremony that's going on right here, known as smudging. The priest comes out and talks to her and says, this is what they're doing. It's a way of clearing any kind of negative energy that's been on your, attached to you. And she says, do you really believe that? And he says, what does it matter what I think? They believe it. Now, right about the center of your screen, it looks like a fountain, but it's a planter. You can see that in the background as the smudging ceremony is happening.
The ritual is called smudging. It's supposed to rid the body of any negativity that may have attached itself to it during times of great stress.
Do you believe it works?
What does it matter what I believe? It's what they believe.
This is definitely one of the most picturesque videos we've shot. Now, sadly, we can't get inside this church, which is okay. If you want to see the inside, you got to watch the movie. But just standing here, visiting these locations, it's quite nice. Aside from the smudging scene, you see this church again later on in the movie as Anna and the two kids run right up the steps into the church itself, and the camera pans up towards the stained glass windows. Now here's where this movie starts to get even more interesting. You see, it's actually part of the Conjuring universe, even though it doesn't have Ed or Lorraine Warren in it. Now the priest that Anna was talking to, he can actually be seen in the movie Annabelle, which is where we're going for our next and final filming location to this movie. The apartment from the movie Annabelle.
A few years ago, I placed little stock in legends, myths. There was an incident with a doll.
It's inside the church where the priest tells Anna that this isn't the first time that he's dealt with something like this. And that the first time involved a doll. And that doll that he's talking about is Annabelle. Now the building that you're looking at right now, 715, the Langham, this was the Annabelle apartment. We get one quick nighttime shot from right about here looking up at the building, the sign, and it says the Palmieri Apartments. Now, if you look very closely at the scene, right above the sign and to the right, you can see that fire escape and then that first little overhang. Everything matches up exactly. With that being said, I think this is a great spot to end today's video at the Annabelle Apartments. At some point, we'll be back to do the Annabelle filming locations properly. There's still one more thing that needs to be said. How do we close our videos, La Baby Gola?
Happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. A bad luck's always coming my way.